Come for the creature comforts, stay for the drive. That's about the best way to sum up the all-electric Genesis GV60, which is silky smooth and comes packed with stuff. Unfortunately, if you count yourself amongst the 80% of Canadians who say they won't consider an EV unless it can travel at least 400 kilometers on a full charge, then this little crossover comes up short, and that's too bad because it has an awful lot going for it otherwise. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. So here's the deal. I have cited this KPMG study before, and I'm going to keep doing it because it seems to sum up the general sentiment of Canadian car buyers pretty succinctly. And my whole take on it is it's totally reasonable to ask for at least 400 kilometers before your next charge. But that definitely poses a bit of a problem for the GV60 and other EVs like it. And I think that is going to continue to be the case moving forward. And before any EV owners, I'm not just talking about the GV60 here, but owners and advocates, they tend to get a little sensitive. Don't misinterpret my take here. This isn't my opinion. This is based on an independent survey from a pretty reputable audit and advisory firm. And the other thing is, it's the opinion of Canadians, and it's been pretty unwavering the last few years. 79% last year, 80% this year say that 400 kilometers is the magic number. Just remember, this isn't a survey conducted by some special interest group or an arbitrary Facebook poll. This is pretty scientific stuff, and it's an annual survey. That number has hovered right around 80% for at least the last few years. And again, it is totally reasonable. And then the other thing to consider is, I don't know, maybe you don't care. Maybe you're not part of that 80%, or you think the 379 kilometers, this one I am driving, is estimated to be able to travel on a single charge, is perfectly fine for you. And in that case, congratulations, you are looking at a pretty good one. Okay, look, this is just my opinion, but then that's what I get paid to share with you in the first place. And that opinion is, I don't think this thing is going to age especially well. Don't get me wrong. Overall, it looks pretty good. But once you start getting into some of these design cues, they're just off. It starts with the split lighting. I like it a lot on the G70 sedan, but it's just not doing it for me here. And then you've got this gaping grille and this weird beak-like nose above it. I think in a few years' time, we're gonna look back at this as a bit of a miss. Now, something I like, this chrome strip that extends across the top of the windshield and down both sides of the vehicle. But then for whatever reason, it zigs and zags towards the back, and it's just totally off-putting. Now, one bright spot, I really like this wheel design. It is excellent. And even though I usually advocate for an actual paint color instead of something bland and boring like gray, this two-tone job is really doing it for me. Well, I guess I better get to some of my gripes in here too. And before I do, just know I do think that this interior looks pretty good overall, but then there's some weird stuff like these reflective stripes on the door panels, as well as the reflective piping on the seats. Just kind of odd. It doesn't really make sense. I've never seen it before, and it's not that that's the bad part. It's just very odd. The other thing is some of the plastics in here feel pretty cheap. The door handles, as well as this weird mirror adjustment on the door. The problem with it is that it's not really in keeping with the rest of the materials, which feel really nice. They look really good too. I'm talking about stuff like the quilted leather that's standard across the two trim lineup in Canada, as well as this micro suede headliner. It is a really nice touch, but again, it stands in pretty stark contrast with some of the other stuff. And I'm sorry, but you're just not getting into an $80,000 Mercedes or BMW and feeling door handles like this. That is just a fact. Anyway, we should get to the good stuff, starting with the very best, and that is the ride quality. I really think it is kind of the signature of this GV60. It's supple, it's opulent, it's easygoing, just like a luxury vehicle should be, electric or otherwise. But then there's that extra serving of smoothness because of the way this thing's powered. The steering is also super smooth. It is amazing. Yes, it is very obviously fake. This is a fully electrically boosted system, but it does a really nice job of simulating the real stuff. I do like that a lot. And then in terms of the power, well, yes, it's smooth. That is the big thing. But then it makes the GV60 quick in a way that no other gas-powered crossover this size could even come close to. Every version in Canada, it is the dual motor all-wheel drive. Now, in the US, there's a new rear-wheel drive version that has a bit more range. And also keep in mind, the base version has more range than this one I'm driving. It's estimated to travel 399 kilometers, so right at that 400 kilometer mark. But this one, with the more features, the bigger wheels, all of that stuff means it can only go about 379 kilometers. And that also seems pretty accurate, especially right now. Temperatures are a little chilly and this thing is barely broken in. It's got a little over 1,150 kilometers on the odometer. The fact that it's showing right around 380 kilometers on a full charge, well, it just goes to show you that that number does seem pretty on point. And speaking of numbers, when you go with the base version, it makes 314 horsepower. That is more than ample. And then torque is the same for that advanced trim as well as this performance one I am driving. So you get 446 pound-feet of it split between the two motors, and that is a whole hell of a lot. When you're cruising around normally, well, even in eco mode, this thing is ready to go at a moment's notice. Just tip in a little bit more on the throttle and it responds just like that, which of course is typical of EVs. There's no buildup of torque. It is there as soon as you ask for it. Now, all that torque goes with 429 horsepower in this performance trim. But then the cool thing is this one also has this button activated boost mode. You hit that and you get 483 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque for up to 10 seconds at a time. And I'm telling you right now, as soon as you hit that button, this thing absolutely flies. I'm telling you, even the most hardened of stomachs are going to be ready to be turned upside down. I am used to accelerating quickly in cars, electric or otherwise. This one is one of those that it just feels that much quicker than it is. It's got all those G-forces. It's crazy. The last EV I drove that gave me this sensation was the Porsche Taycan Turbo S. Just take that into consideration for a second. No, I'm not saying this thing is as quick as the Taycan. It's just the fact that it's got that same kind of visceral feeling that you get as soon as you mash that accelerator pedal with that boost mode activated. But don't worry, this thing isn't all hopped up and hyper aggressive. If you just want to cruise around casually and take advantage of the natural serenity of electrification, it is more than happy to oblige. It does really well there. This thing's also got 4 selectable levels of regenerative braking that run all the way up to full one pedal driving. Silky smooth. Yes, it is a bit grabby if you're not used to it, but I would say that the braking overall is very even keeled. I'm rolling up to this stop sign here. Doesn't really take much. Just ease off that throttle. Here we go, rolling up to the line. Stop. Just like that. I absolutely love it. Now, since we're on the subject of putting energy into the battery pack, this thing does have an 800 volt architecture. That means that you can hook up to a 350 kilowatt DC fast charger. This thing is one of the fastest charging EVs on the market, but a couple key caveats here. First and foremost, that is in ideal conditions. Not only are those chargers hard to find, but It's also hard to hit numbers that high. The other thing is charging that quickly, well, it will lead to a bit more battery degradation more soon than you would get if you're just hooking up to, I don't know, a 50 kilowatt. That's what I did this morning, and it was perfectly fine. Yeah, it took me, I don't know, about an hour to sit there and get up to 80%, but hey, that's the thing with EVs. You got to kind of pick your spots. You shouldn't be hitting those super fast chargers all the time. Few and far between. That is my best advice. And even if you got to sit there for an hour, a good book, kill some time. Not the end of the world. The other thing, charge at home as often as possible. I know that's hard, especially if you live in a condo that doesn't have wiring that you can install a charger. But if you can hook up to a level 2 charger at home, you can charge in about 7 hours. That means you plug it in overnight. Take advantage of off-peak hours if you can, and just drive and enjoy the fact that you're not burning any gas. That's what I'm doing today, and that is one of my favorite things about driving an EV. Other than that, this thing's got just about everything you could want in a crossover this size, starting with a reasonable amount of room. Now, I'm just too tall to sit upright comfortably in the back, but it's not too bad. There's also a ton of legroom. This thing has an EV-specific architecture, and the packaging really pays off. This has also got that quilted leather I talked about, heated front and rear seats, a heated steering wheel, ventilated front seats. That stuff is standard in both trims. It's also got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, although I will point out those are both wired, not wireless. The Hyundai Group still hasn't figured out how to make that system work with its widescreen infotainment display, so you got to plug your phone in. Not the end of the world. This thing's also got a ton of standard advanced driver assistance systems. Now, there's also a heat pump and a battery warmer. Those are both standard in the $72,500 advanced trim. And then this performance version, well, it's priced at $80,500 before tax. And it's got some extras like that boost mode, the extra output, a better stereo. You know how that sort of stuff works. I will say this, that price tag, it's a bit steep. This thing does feel luxurious aside from some of those touches in here I talked about earlier. But if you take a look at the Volvo C40 Recharge that's similarly shaped, it's got that sort of sportback slope look. Well, that thing's cheaper across the entire lineup. There's a rear-wheel drive version in Canada that's even cheaper. It has way more range. Even the all-wheel drive version has more range than this thing. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. But I will say this thing drives way better, and that really is this EV's secret weapon. To recap, I like how smooth and refined the GV60's drive is, the space it has inside, and all the features it comes with. I don't like that the range doesn't hit that 400-kilometer magic number, the quirky design cues inside and out, or that it's priced higher than a rival like the Volvo C40 Recharge. Look, I think the Genesis GV60 is a well-executed EV that comes filled with all kinds of good features, and it offers one of the creamiest rides out there. The big hang-up really is that range that comes up just short of the magic number people are apparently asking for. But as a second vehicle, or if outright range doesn't matter to you in the first place, well, it's definitely worth looking into, but do yourself a favor and make sure you check out that little Volvo too.